Think undercover boss, but with Jesus. I could foresee Jesus where I work, speaking up and being told, yeah, you may have been a bigwig in heaven. What have you done at this company?
Hello, my motorcycle homies. Today, I have a question for you. What would Jesus do? It's not so much a religious question as it is philosophy and a little what-if scenario. So come on, let's go.
All right, we got a new battery and the bike is off and running. That's a good sign here. Can't really have Mike and Ty Caitlin vlog without a motorcycle, so now we have one. So today's episode starts with a little story. This is where the story time with Mike comes in. I work in an office environment, and a few months ago, on a cold morning, I get to work around 6:30 a.m. I have with me a large cup of coffee that I had brewed at home, and it made the half-hour-long drive because I had a lid on it and kept it warm. There was a point before we started work where I set my coffee on a counter next to me. So when I set it on the counter, it started to wobble and it fell before I had a chance to catch it. Mind you, my coffee cup's plastic, but when it hit the ground, the lid just popped off like those cans of chips. That guy almost just hit me. So, I have 5 or 6 coworkers standing next to me. There's a giant puddle of coffee on this tile floor now. And there is a paper towel dispenser that I'm going to have to use to clean it up. The paper towel dispenser is to my right, and all my coworkers are to my left. One by one, each of my coworkers stepped over the coffee, past me, past the paper towel machine, and then just went to work. So eventually, there I am by myself with this mess that I made, and I cleaned it up accordingly. It took me 3 or 4 trips back and forth to the paper towel machine. But it got me thinking. It got me thinking about the golden rule, right? I'm not trying to victimize myself or to demonize the other people involved in this story. If anything, it was just an inspiration for a topic. And that topic is the golden rule. I started doing some research about the golden rule, and what I found was the earliest use of it came from a story called the Elegant Peasant, and it dates back to ancient Egypt around the year 2000 BC. In that story, they use the phrase, "do to the doer to make them do." Now, 2,000 years later, Jesus Christ comes along, and in the Bible, I think it's Matthew 7:12, Jesus says, "Do unto others as you would have them do unto you." Slightly different wording, but the gist of it is still the golden rule, right? How do you want to be treated? And treat others the same way. But again, this goes further than that. Forget the coffee incident for a minute. Fast forward in the timeline to the year 1891. There was an evangelical preacher who was giving a sermon, and he used the phrase, "What would Jesus do?" Which again is a variation of the golden rule. He used that term several times, and it was documented. People quoted from it. And eventually a book was written using that same quote. Well, fast forward to the 1990s, and there was a female youth pastor or some sort of leader in a youth group, and she was trying to convey this message to students. She shortened "What would Jesus do" to the WWJD and made bracelets, and it kind of caught on, and it became a really trendy thing through the 90s, which is when I grew up. So everybody was using "What would Jesus do," WWJD, etc. But it all stems back to the Matthew 7:12, or even before that in the eloquent peasant story. I don't know why I can't say that word. eloquent, I don't know. The eloquent peasant story. That's the first usage of that phrase. Do to the doer to make them do. So, in this downward spiral of thoughts that sometimes I take myself in, I found myself thinking, what would Jesus do if he got a job? Let's say he came back. Okay, open my visor. Let's say Jesus came back and got a job. For whatever reason, he has to stay here for a period of time, and his outreach is going to consist of learning more about modern people, or going through modern times, or he's here for a period of time and he's just buying time. Hypothetically speaking, what would Jesus do if he got a job working with you? If Jesus got a job working with me, I personally feel like he would either be fired or forced to quit. And what I mean by that is, I don't think Jesus would play off his politics. And the impression I get from Jesus talking to people throughout the Bible is he wasn't soft-spoken. He wasn't super passive where people could just talk over him. I'm sure he had an amount of command presence or authority when he spoke, right? Now, that with his moral compass, when he sees something that's not right, he's probably not going to put up with it. Imagine a bunch of coworkers standing around a water cooler talking about some other coworker. Do you think Jesus would be in on that conversation, or would he shut it down? I imagine Jesus wouldn't last long in most social interactions at workplaces because there's a lot of gossip and negative talk, or even traditions that maybe we allow but we shouldn't, right? How many times have you heard somebody use the phrase, is this worth fighting for? Or is this the hill you want to die on? In reference to speaking up about something that's not right. I'm not sure where the line would be if Jesus was in a workplace environment, but I like to think he wouldn't tolerate a lot of stuff that goes on in workplace environments. I've been working since I was 16 and I'm 43 now. I've worked for different levels of government. I've worked in corporate atmospheres, and it's all the same. I mean, humans are humans, right? And they're going to make errors, they're going to make mistakes, they're going to make bad decisions, and it is what it is. The problem we have is when we start to accept it or tolerate it out of fear of repercussions, or speaking up isn't going to be the popular thing. I don't think that was Jesus's way. Again, this isn't a religious episode. If you don't believe in Jesus, that's fine. To each their own. Skip away from that for a minute. If you're still with me, I want to entertain another thought. If Jesus was back in these modern times that we have, how do you think he would get around? In the Bible, he got around on foot. He rode camels, rode on boats. Heck, he even walked on water at one point. I like to think if Jesus was alive now, he would travel via modern transportation. Heck, you could reach more people the more cities you could get to, right? And what better way to travel than stripping away the vulnerability of the doors and the roof of a car? I think Jesus might ride a motorcycle. Again, these are thoughts in my head, so welcome to the show. Jesus traveling on motorcycle, stopping for gas, having people walk up and talk about his Harley or Indian or Japanese cruiser. Whatever he rides, no judgment. People come up to talk to him about his bike, and at which point he starts talking to them. And before you know it, he's witnessing or saving all kinds of people all around the world. And if we want to add a little bit more to the story, Let's say Jesus is traveling around on his motorcycle or in a car or bus or whatever it is he chooses to ride. How do you think he would respond to driving him? What about driving down the street? Somebody's tailgating him. How's he going to respond? What if somebody's driving slow in front of him? I don't think he's going to be aggressive and tailgate. That one's a pretty easy give me. I think there's all kinds of different scenarios, but it's just fun to think about these kind of things and then take them back a step and relay them to our life. Whether you follow the ancient Egypt story or you follow the golden rule or you follow what Jesus said, I think ultimately it boils down to doing what you feel morally right or obligated to do. What do you guys think? What would Jesus do? And just for a little fun, what would Jesus ride? All right, my moto homies. If you found this video entertaining at all, thought-provoking maybe, or even just something to listen to while you sit there underneath that fan with the toilet paper next to you, I'm okay with that. But do me a favor. Click like if you think this video was worth your time. That way YouTube will know that my videos don't suck. But also, and most importantly, that subscribe button underneath this video has been talking a lot of trash. And I think the best way to get back at him is to give him a little click. Until next time.